Hey guys, so OpenAI is partnered with Broadcom to build their first set of in-house AI processors. Now, this is a pretty big deal because OpenAI has basically always been an NVIDIA shop. It's been NVIDIA, 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 NVIDIA. It's always been NVIDIA. They just consistently use NVIDIA chips. That's just the way it's always been. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that OpenAI is most likely NVIDIA's biggest customer. But now that's starting to change. They're too big for NVIDIA. They want to have their own processors that can do what they want. So by 2026, they're supposed to be using their own in-house processors, and it actually draws an insane amount of power. Like, I'll get into it in a minute. Like, the amount of power this is projected to take is, like, ridiculous. But nevertheless, is this a good idea? Considering the company they're partnering with, is this going to save them money or sour relations with other companies or potentially backfire in other ways? My name is Elijah Soul, and let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with this article by Reuters. OpenAI is tapping Broadcom to build its first AI processor in the latest chip deal. The shares of Broadcom rose more than 10%, go figure, because of this insane deal that they managed to score. The company said that on Monday, OpenAI would design the chips, which Broadcom will develop and deploy starting in the second half of 2026. They will roll out 10 gigawatts worth of custom chips, whose power consumption is roughly equivalent to the needs of more than 8 million US households, or 5 times the electricity produced by the Hoover Dam. Just a side note, I should point out, there is a reason why people say, oh, AI is like such a power hog, it uses too much power. And there's a reason why a lot of these AI companies are having to build nuclear power plants just for their data centers. It's because of this. Just for these chips alone, not counting the legacy NVIDIA fleet, it will be using the power roughly equivalent to 8 million US households in one building for AI. That's impressive, okay? Like, let's just say it for what it is. That's an impressive amount of power consumption. Most data centers don't use that much, but these data centers do, because they guzzle power like nothing you've ever seen before. Most analysts do not expect the deal, the latest effort by a tech company to develop custom AI chips, to challenge NVIDIA's grip on the AI accelerator market, given the significant challenge of designing, scaling, and manufacturing in-house chips from the ground up. Which, that's fair. The thing is that OpenAI is now kind of starting to get a lot of stakes with a lot of different companies. Like, they're now building their own in-house chips. They're still buying from NVIDIA. They're also unveiling another supply deal with AMD to get, chips. They're trying to get a slice of the pie everywhere, which kind of makes sense. But in my opinion, this is a little bit risky. And I'll get into that in a minute. But, okay, them partnering with AMD, whatever. That's fine. AMD's mostly trustworthy. Broadcom, I'm going to get into it in a minute, but Broadcom's a bit risky. Just saying. I'll elaborate more in a minute, but that might be a bit of an issue. So, CEO Sam Altman said partnering with Broadcom is a critical step in building the infrastructure needed to unlock AI's potential, which, is the most PR-loaded statement ever. But I guess it's partially correct. I mean, OpenAI knows the needs of... OpenAI knows the needs of itself more than NVIDIA or AMD ever could, because they're OpenAI, right? So, if they're making their own in-house chips, they can do it exactly how they want it to be done, and, it can be in the exact way they want it to be. Financial details of the agreement were not disclosed, and it was not immediately clear how OpenAI would fund the deal, but they're able to fund it anyways. And this kind of follows a trend of there being a lot of custom chips, either made by Amazon is making custom chips, Google's making custom chips. A lot of different things have been happening, and a lot of companies are trying to, make custom chips. And Broadcom has become one of the biggest breadwinners in the generative AI boom because, well, they're the semiconductor company. They make a whole lot of processors. But this is where I get into the bad part about Broadcom. Making a deal with Broadcom is like making a deal with the devil. Broadcom, let me just pull up their site here. Nothing seems bad on the offset. They're just the semiconductor company. They have a whole load of different products. They do, they have storage. They have stuff for wireless and GPS. They have Ethernet, broadband. They have fiber optics. They also do make LEDs, apparently. I didn't even know that. They make stuff for mainframes. They have a whole bunch of enterprise software, which I'm going to get into in a minute. And they do cybersecurity. They do stuff for data centers. They also do semiconductors, as you can kind of see right there. They don't really advertise that nearly as much, but they do make semiconductors. They have some cybersecurity stuff. And they also own a certain company you may or may not have heard of, VMware. Now, this is the part where I get into why I said what I said. Making a deal with Broadcom is like making a deal with the devil. Broadcom is notoriously a vicious company. Okay, look, I'm gonna just give you the cliff notes of this because I'm sure my audience isn't completely people. My audience isn't completely full of people who are in the IT space, so not everybody's gonna know this. So I'm just gonna give the cliff notes. Recently, Broadcom made the acquisition of a certain company called VMware. VMware makes a product called VMware. And VMware is a hypervisor platform, which just to give it in the shortest possible explanation, it's the software you put on the servers in your data center to run things, right? At least that's what most people use it for. It is the base tool you use to run things on your servers. A lot of companies use it. I think for a certain time, Apple used it. It does a lot of different things. You can also have VMware on your desktop if you want, virtual machines. Some of you will probably know what that is. Some of you won't. Shortest explanation for what that is: it's a computer inside your computer, which probably sounds weird to some of you, but there are genuine reasons why you would want that. They used to be an independent company on their own, and they were great. They were the cream of the crop. They were perfect. Everybody loved VMware. Until they got bought out by Broadcom. You want to know what happened when they got bought out by Broadcom? They ruined it. They ruined it fast. They dropped customers like flies because Broadcom's strategy is the most aggressive thing you've ever seen ever. They went so far as to drop entire hospitals, like children's hospitals, from their customer portfolio because they weren't Fortune 500. And then they jack up the prices with the Fortune 500 companies to insane amounts. But those are the companies that can't afford to get away from VMware because, oh, looky here, this is the company that relies all of their business, all of their business stuff on VMware. They can't get out of it. They can't migrate away from it. So we're going to lock them in and jack up the prices to hell and back so that they can't do anything about it. That's how Broadcom works. And this isn't the only time they did that. This is a company called CA Technologies, or Computer Associates. This is a company that made enterprise software, stuff for mainframes, stuff for virtual machines, yada yada. They were very big. They were very important. In 2018, they were acquired by Broadcom. Guess what? They did the same thing. There's a reason you haven't heard of this company in a long time. It used to be a very, very big deal, but it's not anymore. Do you want to know why it's not a big deal? Broadcom. That's why. So Computer Associates got bought out by Broadcom for 18.9 billion US dollars in cash, and then everything turned sour. Lots of people got laid off. Lots of customers went away from the product, except for the ones that couldn't, because they were so locked into using it. This is just what Broadcom does. They are the semiconductor company with teeth. Genuinely making a deal with Broadcom is like making a deal with the devil. It's not a good idea. Now, they may be one of the few companies that can make custom semiconductors, but there's so many different options. Like, you could probably do, I don't know if Broadcom can only make a certain type of semiconductor that, like, somebody like Qualcomm couldn't, but, like, you could go to Qualcomm or something, or some other fab, or you could make your own fab. The thing is that these are the big companies that do have a lot of... The companies that go to Broadcom for these sorts of things are the type of companies that have a lot of money lying around. So they could go to other places to make their own custom chips, but everybody's going to Broadcom. I feel like that's a really bad decision in the long term, especially when you consider the fact that they're like loan sharks, but for technology. They are the most aggressive company when it comes to gouging customers of like millions and millions of dollars. I feel like partnering with them in the long term is a terrible solution because they are so aggressive with their strategy. It's actually ridiculous. You know, I could be wrong. This could turn out okay for OpenAI. I don't think OpenAI is going to get bankrupted by Broadcom, but they definitely could get... It definitely could turn a little bit sour because of Broadcom, because they like to gouge their customers. That's what they're known for. They're the company you don't want to get acquired by, for that very reason. So, and then on top of the fact as well that OpenAI is the most tight-knit with NVIDIA, so having them kind of turn away from NVIDIA a little bit could definitely sour their relationship to a certain degree, because NVIDIA and OpenAI were like peanut butter and jelly, right? But now they're kind of swerving away, and you know that could definitely go a bit wrong for OpenAI, but I don't know. I guess as I tend to say in these videos, time will tell. But I saw this headline and I was like, God, Broadcom is such a bad company to make a deal with, because they're so aggressive. But whatever. Maybe this will turn out well for them. I guess we'll see. So, I don't know. That is about it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Take care, you guys. And remember, as always, to stay safe out there.